Welcome back to another episode of the On the Bloc podcast. Today I'm very lucky to be joined by Luke. So you've got myself, Ryan, as the host and content manager of Bloc Devoir, and now I'll let Luke take it away and introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Luke. I'm currently a luxury fashion social media marketing exec.
So Luke, I know we've been talking quite a while about what your current role is. I want to give people a bit of a background, a bit of an intro, how you got into that role, because I'm sure there'll be quite a few listeners who really want to get into fashion, really want to get into working for either a big brand or a store in your case, and how you get into that. So do you want to give people a brief intro of how you got into fashion, like where your interest first stemmed from?
I mean, probably like a lot of people, it started sort of the late sort of like 2014, 15, 16, when like trainers, Jordan 1s and stuff, that hype was really building, and I think I just sort of went into like a bit of a YouTube rabbit hole of watching sneaker reviews and stuff like that, and I was sort of going through going into college and then sort of figuring out what I wanted to do at uni during this sort of interest, when I was sort of building interest in that. So I did video game design and media at college, which is obviously very different to what I do now, but it's always stemmed from that creative background. And then I finished college, took a year out, and sort of like, what do I really want to do? What do I really enjoy at the moment? And it was fashion and streetwear, from sneakers more in particular. So I looked at the university near me in Chester, University of Chester, and decided that I think I wanted to do a fashion course with applications design. So what's the next best thing? That's fashion marketing. So I did fashion marketing and communications at the University of Chester, and then graduated a couple of years ago, and applied for the THG graduate program, which is where I work now. Probably it was late 2022, and that sort of process and interview process is quite long. So I started late 2023, and I'm still there now. And it sort of stemmed from doing fashion at uni, and then because it's quite a unique degree, it's not just a marketing degree or like journalism or like a lot of people who work in my place do English literature or English language and stuff for copy and blog content and stuff like that. I had like a unique angle, I think, that other people didn't have, and that sort of allowed me to get the opportunity to work in luxury fashion, like say for Coggles, and I also cover All Soul, My Bag Online, which is like a luxury handbag retailer, The Hut, which is like homeware, and Scandinavian fashion sort of retailer. So I think it was I got lucky, but I think I sort of made the right decisions to sort of get that look, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And do you think, based on like your role currently, and maybe the people you work with, do you think like it was essential that you went to university? Like, do you think, because I think that like you sort of said about what you did at college, and then I think like a lot of people at that age, me the same, is you don't really know what you want to do, and you're not always sure if it's the right choice to go to university. Do you want to get a job? Is it an apprenticeship? Do you think that doing that university course really helped you in the role that you're in now?
I think, do you know what, it's probably not the greatest answer, but I think it really varies on like your situation and maybe what motivates you. So a lot of big companies, big brands and stuff will offer internships and apprenticeships. So when you're sort of maybe coming out of college and you're at sort of, 16 to 18 age range, you can apply for apprenticeships and internships at some of these places. And after that internship, they'll be like, well, we need you to go to college to do this, to get a qualification, then we can have you back. So I know for a fact there's some people at my in my offices that started working at THG when they were 18, 19, sort of straight out of that. I think I wanted that qualification because I feel like with my parents and my family, that was like what the natural sort of next step was. But definitely think now, there's so many different ways to get into industry, and especially like you can maybe start your own business, or start freelance, or there's so many learning resources online that you can build up your own portfolio without having professional experience or a qualification. I think there's a lot of entry levels and a lot of entry ways, but also makes the job market really competitive because you've got so many different people with so many different experiences and talents and skills, and I think that is great, but it's also making it more difficult for everyone because you're competing with more people than ever for those jobs.
And is there anything that stands out for you from your university course where you're like, that really helped me, really, like, that's something I apply in my job right now? Because I know a lot of people probably think that university is a lot of theory, it's a lot of, is it just like a continuation of school? Is this actually, right for the real world? Is it right for a real job? Does it help me? Is there anything that university taught you that it really does apply to what you work on right now?
I think probably it's not almost what you learn, it's how you learn in university. A lot of it is, right, I'm going to give you a brief, you need to do this many words, you need to do this, that, I'll see you in a month, I'll see you in 3 months or something. And obviously there's you touch base and stuff, but a lot of it is independent, and a lot of it is you have to go off and discover this for yourself. And the good thing about our course is it was like that, it was all coursework. So there was a lot of like self-discovery, I suppose, in that. And so everyone's work was very different. Even the way we presented our work was very different. And I think that gives you like a bit of an edge because you have, I only know creative stuff. I'm not really marketing numbers, that sort of thing. That's not really me at the moment. So I always had a different way of presenting myself. And I think that was like, it was an advantage getting the job. I think like my CV probably stood out. It was very visual. It was very different. And then obviously during my job, because I learned a lot of creative things, a lot of the content I post is very different to what previous employees posted because I had that sort of creative flair, so to speak. So I think it's that independent working along with that sort of creative edge that I think is missing in was missing in a lot of marketing areas. And I sort of think with like TikTok and social media and stuff, it's slowly coming back in a way. So, but I'm sure we'll get onto that at some point soon. So,
absolutely. So you'd say more so it's the skills that it taught you rather than the actual theory and knowledge itself.
Yeah, I think obviously it's good for like building up your knowledge. So I knew so much more about the fashion industry after the course because naturally you spend 10, 12-hour days learning about it all and stuff like that. But yeah, I think it's those skills that you don't realise you've built up that people don't give uni enough credit for, like independent learning, independent working. Because when you go into an office, you can't just sort of pester your manager at every second. You have to learn those things for yourself, and I think that's something that I don't really hear people give uni credit for. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree because I think we probably work in a similar role from an office-based perspective and a marketing perspective, and I think that's a lot from like a lot of the new starters and a lot of maybe the younger people who join maybe not out of university is that maybe is something that you notice is missing, that they often require a lot of almost spoon feeding of stuff and maybe just scared in some respects to be proactive and just take it upon themselves to be like, right, I'll be independent, I'll go and find it out for myself, I'll go and do it, and then maybe come back and check if it's right, as opposed to waiting to be told what to do.
Yeah, I think, and I mean it's understandable, isn't it? I think when you, especially when you work in bigger businesses and you see some of the numbers being thrown around, for example, there's a lot of responsibility and from personal experience, they put a lot of responsibility on you no matter how long you've been there, which on the one hand is great because you learn very quickly, but on the other hand it is like, do I do this? Could I make a mistake? But I think you've got to run the risk, and I think that's where a lot of like the best work comes from, and your best sort of achievements will come from is taking that risk. So
absolutely, yeah. I think like, and sometimes it is those mistakes that you learn from. I guess that if you don't try and you don't make errors, then you won't learn and know better for next time. So I think it's also okay in some respects. Obviously, you don't want to make mistakes, but if you didn't make a mistake, maybe it won't help improve, or you learn from it from the next time. if we just touch on your role now, so I know you mentioned there was quite a long interview process. What did that process look like? Because I know a lot of people probably want to get into like THD, so the Hook Group and other big businesses like that. I went through, I previously worked for Bentley, and their interview process was quite long and intensive and numerous rounds. What was that process like for you, and how do you think you tackled that to get the role?
I think, to be fair, from start to finish, I think they were very clear on communication. Like I heard a lot. There was a lot of like touch base points and stuff. So it started off like your standard sort of screening with HR. Well, you apply online, and then if your application gets accepted, you have a screening with HR. Make sure you're a real person, sort of get to know you, what you're like, and maybe what stage you're at. You know, because you can apply whilst you're in uni to then start after you finish uni. So a lot of people do that. So you have that initial screening, and then you'll have like a quick, maybe like Teams call with someone relevant to the role. So my THG is split into a couple of different divisions. So I'd be working under beauty and luxury. So I had a quick call with the beauty HR, and then they sort of told me a bit more about the role and what it was going to look like. And then if you sort of made it past the screening, which quite a lot of people do, it is sort of like you're sort of just a standard to make sure you're actually who you say you are. You'll get invited to, it's like, they call it like an assessment centre. It's not that intense. It doesn't feel like that much pressure. But you go down to the studios with, I think there was 30 people in mine, and you'll just go through like a sort of group task, one-to-one interviews. There'll be a Q&A with current graduates who are on the graduate scheme within the company, which is really good. And then just like general mingling and networking, I suppose. And that is like an all-day thing. So I think the process started in November. That assessment day was in January. And I think a lot of it is being yourself as soon as possible. And like the group task, for example, just make your voice heard. Because they sit there like they're 2 yards away and they're assessing all of you at once. So you just got to make your voice heard, and you're better off running the risk of them going, oh, well, he said this idea and I didn't quite agree with it, to maybe get that was a good idea. Maybe they didn't listen to him, but he still made that effort to have that idea and stuff. So, and then with like the interviews, so you would have sort of been assigned like a job position in a team. So you'd be interviewed by the manager of that team. And again, it was super friendly. The offices are sort of very sort of laid back in that sort of sense. When you walk in, it's not all suits and ties. It's, you know, we're in the same building as My Protein, so a lot of them wear like gym wear and stuff to the office. So it's really nice. And in the interview, I think I touched on it briefly, but my creative side, I think, helped me through that. And what I looked at in university was sort of like digital fashion and what AI and the metaverse and stuff and all of that could do for digital fashion. I think they were quite interested in that, because it's not an angle necessarily that someone with a business degree or a marketing degree would have on the role itself. And I think it was just I was just myself, and obviously they saw something that they appreciated, and they appreciated my sort of knowledge within fashion. And I think it just sort of went from there. And then maybe a month later, I heard back saying, congratulations, we want you to start in, so say like mid-February, early March, they sort of said, we want you to start in September, because they have 2 intakes. I think they start in June or September, depending on your university time or just little things like that. So it was a very sort of, how big the company is and the reputation it has of being fast-paced, sort of intense working. It was quite a nice, sort of pleasant experience. But I think it was my knowledge of fashion and interest in fashion that got me the role in the luxury fashion division. So
sounds good. And I think one thing you mentioned there about group exercise, I think that's a good thing for people listening to take on if you're going for interviews, because we do a very similar process at my work, and I think group tasks, it's when you're assessing people and you're always looking for the skills, is like you say, people not being afraid to say what they think. And I think it's obviously we always look for like a fine balance of You don't want to be the person that takes over and disregards what everyone else is saying, but in the same respect, you don't want to be the person that just sits there and says nothing, because what are you offering and what are you bringing to the table? So I think that's probably a good skill for anyone who's preparing for an interview, probably to learn, isn't it? That to be able to voice your opinion, but also know when to listen and when to maybe put that opinion in, because I think that's what when we do group interviews, I think it's always like the fine balance of like, you're just looking for people who want to contribute, who present well, who speak well, but also you don't want to be that person who's loud and overconfident and doesn't take what anyone else says with any value. So I think that's a really good point there, and a good flag for people going through the interview process that they need to look out for.
I think a big sort of keyword on a lot of like applications and stuff you'll see is like collaboration and teamwork, and that, especially within marketing, you're going to be aligning campaigns with different teams and different roles, and who have totally different ideas maybe, or sort of KPIs to hit than you. So you've got to be able to work together whilst also making sure that you're pushing your channel as much as you can. And I think it is just like a respect thing. I think if you're, like you say, sort of trying to be loud and trying to take over, it does come across as, well, what are they going to be like in office life? Because a lot of it, 100%. Especially when you're working in a bigger company, you're going to spend a lot of time in the office, and you're going to spend a lot of time around people, and you don't have to love everyone you work with, but you've definitely got to be able to get along and be civil and sort of be likable to a point, and approachable. And I think that does they do think about those sorts of things a lot in those sort of interview settings. So, yeah.
100% agree. And now, following on from that interview process, obviously been very successful there. Yeah. So, if you want to just give a brief intro of your current job title, what does that role look like for you? Is there anything that you do now that you didn't expect, like from when you applied for it?
So currently, I run 4 brands at the moment. So what I sort of do, I do the same for sort of all the brands. So I'll just sort of give you like a general rundown, and just it applies across all 4 accounts. So I run all the social channels. So it'll be Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, X, TikTok, Pinterest when I've got the time, and then YouTube when I have the time too. So I mean, like YouTube and Pinterest are one of those sorts of more silent, tick along by themselves sort of platforms. So we upload like shorts of like Instagram Reels or TikToks that we've uploaded, and they sort of chug along really in the background, and every now and again you get like a viral hit. It's always just good to have a presence, I suppose, on a lot of these. Pinterest is the same. When we've got chance, we'll go on and do work on Pinterest, because there's definitely like a big audience for that at the moment, especially in the sort of area of luxury fashion that we're in. But in terms of like Facebook and Instagram, we post every day, or at least every other day on Instagram across those accounts, whether that be product highlights or maybe something for engagement for what we think our audience will enjoy. So if there's a awards show or awards premiere or a movie premiere or something that is relevant to our audience, we'll post it, and it's sort of adding that lifestyle feel to our accounts. And that's always a tricky process, because a lot of the accounts have very different audiences, so what works on one won't work on the other. So that's sort of where the more you do it, the more you sort of get into the boots of who your target audience are. So we upload on Instagram daily. Stories go up Monday to Friday. Again, whether that be product highlight or maybe announcing a discount or something like that. TikTok is such an interesting platform at the moment, because we are trying to get onto TikTok as much as possible, but obviously our platforms are a lot smaller on TikTok than they are on the Instagram and Facebook. So I mean, it's funny to look at across TikTok. Actually, a lot of our biggest brands that we sell don't have TikTok, or they have a very small TikTok account that they just sort of post once a month on, or something like that. So it is like a really weird sort of our target audience almost hasn't made it to TikTok yet, or hasn't quite made that sort of jump.
Yeah. Do you think that's an age thing, or?
I think so. I think, like, obviously for us, I mean, I feel like I'm old scrolling through TikTok now. I'm only 25, but I feel like I'm almost too old for some of the content I see, or it goes straight over my head. And I think our sort of target audience for a lot of our pages is 25 to 40 to 45 maybe. So it probably isn't relevant. They'd obviously appreciate our content, but your FYP on TikTok can be very broad, or very, maybe doesn't align with what you actually watch. So it is very tricky to sort of ask people to go from Instagram, where they've spent years catering their feed and in their explore page to exactly what they like to see in their following and everything, to TikTok, where, you know, it is very eclectic in terms of what you can find.
Do you think that, because I know it's similar conversations I've had with people and small brands, is that, like you said there, a lot of the brands that you probably look after in terms of our stock are probably not super high luxury, but they are sort of probably like that mid-range luxury. They're probably expensive. They're definitely not like entry-level product. So do you think with those brands that, you, like you say, they personally and their own brand pages don't really have a TikTok, do you think that's something they are missing out on? Do you think, or do you think it's right that maybe they are holding off, or do you think it's missing a trick?
I think it's a tricky one. I think a lot of brands don't have TikTok because they don't think it aligns with their brand values. I think a lot of brands, I mean, some brands don't have Instagram, or won't allow like it was recently, obviously Fashion Month, we're just sort of coming to the end of it now, and some brands said no social and no phones at their shows because they want people to take it in, you know, sort of physically while they're there. So I think even now we're still seeing a lot of brands sort of try and step away from technology because they want to go back to that more traditional route. But some brands we start, like Ganni is a great example of a very Scandi luxury brand that's very popular, and their Instagram and TikTok is almost catered to that younger audience, where they create content that's fun, that's very personalised. It has their staff in that work in the offices and work in the stores and stuff, and it's very like, look who we are as people. And I think a lot of luxury brands, not that they don't want that, but it's not about the people behind the brand, it's about the clothing. It's clothing first, not lifestyle first. I don't know whether you have ever watched or looked at Percival Menswear, their TikTok. They've got a brilliant TikTok. I think it's Christopher Grove, maybe.
Grove, yeah.
He's brilliant. He does a lot of the videos himself. He'll stand next to a rail and talk through the collection, and he'll say why they've done this and why they've done that. And I think a lot of people like that. You know, he's wearing the brand, he's repping the brand, he's all about it. They want to be almost like him, or they want to sort of have that same sort of lifestyle and that feeling as when he wears the clothes and stuff. So I think with a lot of brands, they are sort of faceless. So they don't want to, and for TikTok to work, you sort of have to put your face out there. You have to be on camera. You have to do voiceovers or do that potentially silly, slightly off-brand meme. You know, and a lot of companies don't really want to do that, which is, I think it's absolutely fair, but having a presence on social media is so important now, because a lot of people almost validate brands by their social media presence. So if I went on a website and they were selling luxury clothing for hundreds of pounds, I'd probably check their socials to see how legitimate they are. And if they had like no followers across anything, I'd be like, oh, well, I've not heard of them before. How do I know this is real? Which I know sort of comes back to the knowledge thing, but again, it's sort of a lot of younger generation will use TikTok and Instagram to, you know, they need to have presence on there to be legit almost.
Do you think like, because obviously with like big brands, like I know like Bottega don't have Instagram, and I think what you said there about having like a face on TikTok and being personable is really important, and that's something from when I've spoke to a lot of small brand owners and worked with a lot of small brands, is like it's almost essential. And
Yeah.
Do you think it's maybe that difference in a scale of what brand you're talking about? Because like some of the larger brands who are maybe faceless, like I mean, I can't give examples without looking into specific socials, but like if you were say like a Prada, a Gucci, so a big fashion house, you maybe don't need it because your brand awareness is there, people know you.
Yeah,
but
100%.
but like for small startups, which I think, especially since the pandemic, the amount of small brands that have popped up has been insane. Like if you don't have that, you're almost like missing out, aren't you? Because people don't know who they're buying into. They don't know about the brand. If it's just a product, it's like it's a t-shirt. So what? Like you and a million others are doing a t-shirt. Why am I buying into you? Is that something that goes into Coggle's thoughts as well? Potentially wanted to grow their pages.
Yeah, I think again, like because we're on the sort of quiet luxury sort of side. We try and do interviews and bits and pieces here and there. We have a lot of blog content on Coggle's Life where we interview like our, the brand creative directors of, we've had Steen Goya and a couple of jewellery brands, and we've talked to Gani and stuff like that. So that's blog content online. And that was sort of maybe before, it was a couple of years ago before this sort of being a face was really important. So when we're talking to brands about content, we sort of say, oh, if we send you these questions, could you answer them on camera? So we could maybe use that footage, for videos and for reels and for TikToks, because it is important to. I would personally rather watch an interview than read one, so it has got to sort of be that watchable media now, and we are trying to move that way. And I've featured on a couple of Coggles Man videos, and I've done some voiceovers for Coggles, and we like cover events and stuff where we chatted to people at the events and whatnot. But it is always that fine line of we want to appear sort of professional and sort of product first, I suppose.
Yeah.
But how can we tie sort of people like me into it, and sort of very briefly covering when we talk about going into social media and going into marketing, when you try and get into social, if you've done any of that sort of maybe vlog or commentary content, it's super important to make sure you show that, because I think a lot of brands are looking for that. And a lot of brands now are going super viral on TikTok because they talk to their customers via replying to comments and stuff like that. So, and we've sort of seen sort of tiny instances of that on like Twitter and stuff. I know like Ryanair have a very laid back sort of almost not insulting, but like they'll reply to like sort of hate comments with funny replies, and people like that personality almost because they sort of feel like they're being more real with them than just sort of sending
big brand.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's definitely something we're trying to do, but it's trying to incorporate it in that quiet luxury way and keeping it on brand, which is always going to be tricky, because I think people love silly things now. They love that sort of silly TikTok dances or audios and stuff. So it's how can we pick the ones that are on brand and do those.
Is there any challenges you face? Like obviously you stock a wide variety of brands. Like, do those brands give you certain guidance on what you can say, what you can't talk about, and does that make it difficult in some respects if you've got to tailor your approach for different brands?
I think a lot of brands are very free with it. I've never put up a bit of content and a representative from a brand's emailed me on the Monday morning going, "Hi, you might have to take this down." I've never had that. A lot of brands, if we have a meme video, for example, that's gone viral, they'll just see it as their product reaching more people. So as long as we're not sort of negatively reviewing or sort of talking bad about a product or a brand, they're usually all right. So I think, but it is, I mean, you've just got to be super careful online anyway. I think a lot of things can be taken one way. I get people to check some of maybe the more, not opinionated, but sort of more, opinionated content, I suppose. Just sort of say, this is how I want to project it. Are you receiving it that way, or should we word it differently? So I think it is just being careful and just sort of, if you think you're running a risk, I know we talked about taking those risks, but maybe in this scenario, just double check with someone. Just send it to another marketing person and say, if another brand posted this, what would you think about it? And it is, as easy as that, because we all have this probably quite negative, if you can see something online that you think is slightly wrong, the comments on it, the hate comments and stuff will be unbelievable. Where if it's a nice post, people will go, oh, that's nice, and they'll go past. So people do highlight they pick holes and stuff in a lot of content, so you've just got to be careful. But yeah, it's just the internet, I think, nowadays.
Yeah, I think that probably no brand speaks more than that at the moment than probably Balenciaga. So from probably being I'm very on top maybe 4 or 5 years ago of being like everybody wanted Balenciaga to now they've obviously worked a lot with Kanye, very risky personality to work with at the moment. They've obviously had their own questionable incidents over the past couple of years as well. And I think that's, like you say, people would be very quick to disassociate with a brand as soon as it gets that reputation. Like I see some Balenciaga pieces, I'm like, they're actually really nice. Like I get it. I like the silhouette. The quality's good. It's a bit expensive, but at the same time, in my mind, I'm like, well, people now associate the brand with, maybe the child pornography issues, the issues with Kanye, and like you don't want to wear a brand and think you associate with that. So is that something, another challenge that you sort of have to consider as well?
I definitely think people do, it sticks in people's minds with things like that. Luckily, I think we've got a lot of brands on Coggles and across the other sites that don't really have those issues, sort of to the extent I'm aware of. But we've got people who work on brand and buyers and stuff that probably wouldn't buy into brands like that, because it is that we've got a reputation too. So we don't want to ruin that reputation by investing in some of these brands.
And out of the brands that Coggles stock, is there any that are your favourites, any that you really like to work on and create content for?
Well, I think obviously we met at the Belstaff event back in, I'm going to say May, end of May. I think Belstaff have been great to work with. Again, a lot of my likeness for a lot of brands comes from how they are in those email chains and how helpful they can be. And, if we say, oh, have you got some cool imagery? Have you got any content for this? And they'll send us content potentially. Like, it is that sort of exchange that I think helps with sort of brand, how I perceive a lot of brands. So, I mean, Belstaff were great. That event was really good. Obviously, that was a very good day. Represent, another one. We had an exclusive collection with them back in April. And we threw an event, and it was great to meet some of those guys. And they're obviously, I think, one of the most intense sort of growing teams at the moment. And they're like, they seem to be smashing it on every level. Mm-hmm. So definitely great to sort of get an insight into what they're like as a brand. And then we've last season, autumn winter 23, we started stocking MKI, the men's sort of streetwear brand, which is great. It was great for Coggles because it's probably a lower price point than a lot of our menswear brands at the moment. They've been great to work with, super helpful. We interviewed Vic Taylor, the brand owner, creative director. We interviewed him, and that went out on socials and stuff. That was a really good experience. And I think that sort of brand is a sort of brand I'd wear. Like, I have a couple of pieces from MKI, so I think a lot of it is, obviously what I'd wear. I'm not biased. I won't sort of post them all the time, but I do enjoy sort of making content around them. And I think obviously maybe taking it away from menswear slightly, Ganni are massive in sort of that Scandinavian fashion industry. They've just shown in Paris Fashion Week, so they're making big waves in terms of, that was like the first show they've shown outside of Copenhagen Fashion Week, so that was a big step for them. They've just had they just employed the creative director who used to work at, I think it was Balenciaga or Prada or somewhere like that. So that sort of higher
level
fashion.
they're aiming for.
Yeah, and I think it was a good step for them, and they're a great brand to work with. They always have cool events. We had an exclusive range just before I started, actually, last year with them. So again, I think a lot of it can be sort of maybe how we talk to brands and how they come across, sort of in sort of those sort of initial talks and stuff. But a lot of most brands are. I've only had sort of good conversations with brands and stuff. NN07, we ran a gifted campaign with NN07, which is sort of a contemporary sort of Scandinavian brand. They make really nice menswear pieces. And they were super friendly, super helpful. We worked on them with the gifted campaign, worked with some cool influencers. I think the brands we work with are always tend to be super nice, super helpful and stuff. So, yeah, don't know whether that was the political answer, but
yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any sort of, from the content you make, is there any sort of brand that you see is more? Well, this might have to be a bit diplomatic here, but is there any brand that you think really gets the most engagement on social media? Is the one brand that stands out that you always see people resonate with more of all the ones you stock?
So I've split into menswear, womenswear. So womenswear, see a lot of success with Ganni. They make super sort of quirky but wearable pieces, and they have a lot of like iconic silhouettes. So you have like the Ganni Boo bag, you have like the knitted vests that they make, and then like the tote bags, like sort of staple pieces that the hashtag sort of Ganni Girls, which is a massive sort of like cult following almost of their brand. They always do really well on socials. People find that their content and sort of their designs, I think, just really sort of interesting and uplifting. And again, it sort of goes back to how they are across social. So their social channels are sort of a great inspiration for content. If you're having sort of a similar womenswear brand like that, they make really engaging, friendly, welcoming content. So I think that sort of comes over to our audience, because probably we have a lot of shared audience, I imagine, on Coggles. A lot of people who follow Coggles also follow Ganni. So I think Ganni for womenswear would be, always a good one. And then menswear, like Represent. I think Represent has got a very like sort of iconic look. You could probably look at a Represent hoodie, or look at a hoodie and know if it's Represent or not just by what the back print looks like or the front print, And I think it's a very wearable brand. I wear it, but then someone else who also wears it wears completely different other things to me. So I think it is that sort of ease of, the essential pieces, the hoodies, the tees, like the Owners Club stuff. Pardon me, sorry. Are super wearable and super easy, and I think especially menswear, we like that. We like the reliable pieces. Yeah, and the quality is there. Obviously, it's more expensive than when it started, and it's gone up in the last couple of years, but it's definitely it's still up there in terms of what you get for your money. And I think almost it's that lifestyle thing again as well. We've not even talked about like George Heaton, but he's got that, through his Instagram and through what he posts on Represent, you do sort of want to live that lifestyle of, super into your health and wellness and being the best you can be, and like the on a mission tagline and stuff like that. It's really important to a lot of guys and a lot of women too, because it's obviously a unisex brand, really. Obviously it's technically menswear, but some of the girls in work will wear Represent t-shirts and hoodies because they are just very, very unisex. And I think that's I think that helps. So yeah, I'd probably say Ganni and Represent would be the two that, if I could sort of choose to do well on socials, it'd be those two, I think.
Is there any brand, maybe putting your buyer's head on now, is there any brand that you would like to see at Coggles, or a brand that maybe that doesn't fit Coggles that you'd like to work with? Or is that putting you on the spot? Is that a tough one?
It's put me on the spot, but I think obviously one of the things I find fascinating about luxury fashion and fashion in general is how far ahead we plan, and how far ahead a lot of they're buying bits and stuff. So they'll be buying for autumn winter 25, so for a year from now, and then thinking about SS 26, which is obviously a crazy thought, but So we've had, you have these conversations. I think as someone on social, you do get asked your opinion because obviously they want the brands to pop and they don't want to put a brand out that doesn't do very well on social because then they've got no sort of evidence to show this brand, hey, look, it's really popular, you should give us more, or we want you next season, sort of thing. I'll always be trainer focused. We've got Merrill on goggles for SS24, which is really good, and they've sort of sold through really well. I literally bought a pair, I think, the day the brand launched on goggles.
I bought a pair when the Gore-Tex Speed. I think the model is
Moab, like Speed 2 trainers. Yeah, they're super wearable, but they're very versatile and like they're great for like weather like now. I mean, you never know when it's going to rain, that sort of thing. So I'd like maybe footwear brands similar to that. So your Asics, your Solomons, I think they're sort of maybe peaking now. So they're hitting that sort of top level, but brands like that I think would be.
I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I think a lot of the conversation around the sneaker space right now, especially in Nike with John Donahoe leaving as CEO, and I think we've all seen like maybe what the pandemic did in terms of like the Dunks and Jordan ones went crazy, but like the brands you've mentioned there, I don't know if you feel the same, but maybe 5 years ago I could not see myself wearing Merrill, Saucony, Salomon, Asics to an extent.
Asics, yeah. I think, a lot of it is in like individual style. I think Solomons and Asics and Saucony is a really good one to mention too. They were sort of almost people were rebelling against that like Panda Dunk sort of style, the Air Force One. They're great shoes in themselves, and I'd never judge someone for wearing them because they're comfy, they're great for every day, they go with everything. In terms of a versatile shoe, they're fantastic. But your Solomons, they look different. The pair of Solomons that I've got, they're here, they're not here, but they're green. Would I buy a green Air Force One? Probably not. But I'd buy a green Solomon. I think it's that almost. Gork Core was a massive thing maybe a couple of years ago, and buying into 100%. Your mountain wear, and it almost stemmed from
Arc'teryx.
Arc'teryx, and then maybe the next step from like North Face. People got a bit bored of the puffers, so they go, well, what's the next sort of hiking cool utility thing? I've probably my most worn piece in my wardrobe would be the Supreme. I've got a Supreme North Face jacket in it. I'll wear it every day shamelessly because it is just a great comfy versatile piece. It's waterproof, it's warm, so I think it is that. It was almost that, going back to the original point, it was that rebellion against those maybe more generic plain. Well, I see that, I see those sneakers all the time. I've seen 10 people on a night out wear Air Force Ones. That's probably an underestimate, to be honest. But, it's that unique rebellion against those sort of plainer shoes. And we're still seeing it now, and I think it's normalised. I think we see a lot of vintage fashion as well, sort of vintage streetwear especially, that have the unique designs or retro designs or patterns and stuff like that, which go well with these sorts of colourful, bright, out there shoes. And people don't talk about the fact they're super comfy. Like Merrill shoes, I'm sure you'll agree, really comfy. I have no problem wearing them all day.
They're built for purpose, aren't they? They're built for use, being outside, walking a lot, hiking. So I suppose comfort is the key factor in it, really, isn't it?
Definitely. And it's the same like New Balance. It's a fantastic one. It's almost like a bridge brand. So you go from your Nike, Adidas to maybe a New Balance. You go out there a bit, maybe get like the 9060s, which is a bit of a different model to sort of standard trainers, and then you go on to your Solomons, like we say, Asics, Saucony, and Merrill, for example. But like New Balance are running shoes. When people say, what trainer should I get? I'm like, well, buy a running trainer because you will just be comfy, or buy a trainer built for, like, say, hiking and stuff like that, because I do a lot of commuting. I'm on my feet, quite a bit. So you just want to be comfy. And I think a lot of trainers are smart enough, especially with what people wear to offices and stuff nowadays, that you can style them with, trousers and a shirt and stuff like that, and sort of get on with it. So, I definitely think maybe we're seeing a peak of a couple of brands, and maybe Solomon might, or something like that, might level out. But I think there'll always be a brand coming through that are making that sort of well, what's next sort of shoe. And maybe someone like Merrill with their like, it's like the one trail line, might step up because they make a lot of unique shoes that are obviously probably more out there now, but in a couple of years, who knows, might all be wearing them, so yeah.
And do you think that, I mean, this is probably something that you have to pay attention to with trying to create content and put content out there that's relevant and involved with trends. Obviously the change in the sneaker space is quite well known now.
Mm-hmm.
Is that probably one of the hardest things for your role of trying to stay up with trends, trying to post content that's relevant to your audience and trying to figure out almost what's next?
Yeah, I think obviously the thing with marketing is you're not marketing to yourself, you're marketing to an audience that maybe, for a brand that maybe you're not as interested in. So when I'm doing work for my bag, which is one of the accounts I run, the copy is very different. It's all handbag based, and I personally don't own any designer handbags, so it's finding that. What do I think people like? I almost look to the people around me. So my girlfriend likes luxury and designer handbags, so I'll say, what do you like right now? And then maybe I'll ask the girls in work. So I think a lot of it is using who's around you and using your sort of surroundings in your own social. I live on my phone because I like social media on my own time and stuff anyway. So I'm on my phone a lot. So I'll see a lot of these trends sort of subliminally in my mind, and then I'll look back at it and I go, oh yeah, I've seen this, I've seen that, I've seen this is a way people are styling this piece this autumn. So a lot of it is almost sort of you don't notice it until you think about it, and then all of a sudden you've been seeing a brand popping off for the past like 3 months and you've only just realised. So I think it's always tricky because you're always you might be marketing something that isn't in your own interest, but it's probably not like the most healthy thing to say, but you've sort of just got to live it. I think you will pick up these things in your spare time, and I think it is obviously there's a cut-off point where you need to switch off, and I'm a big advocate for that, but you will sort of enjoy it more. I didn't necessarily know who Ganni were before I started working at my job, but now I watch their runway shows, I'll look at their new collections and stuff because it interests me now, because I'm more involved in it, and I enjoy the pieces and I enjoy what they stand for and I enjoy their socials and all that sort of thing. So it does just come with time. I think a lot of the time, especially in a position like mine, you've just got to be able to give yourself that chance to build interest in it.
Obviously, picking up on trends and following trends can be quite difficult. But like you say, you have to be involved and paying attention all the time. But in terms of the role now, what would you say is the most challenging part of it? Like, what is it that you find most difficult, or something that you didn't expect?
I think it's what's the most difficult part? I think it is finding those relevant trends. I think because our audiences are big, but they're not sort of we touched on like Gucci and Prada and those brands that don't necessarily need to push their name and stuff out there because they're already so massive. It's about finding those trends that actually fit within your brand and are sort of not necessarily 100% on brand if made for us, but we can spin it this way to make it on brand for us. We can make it our own, because in luxury fashion we are still, we're quite reserved. So Sisters and Seekers are a fantastic example of they found a niche and made that niche their own with their skits and how they run their socials and stuff. And when people say like, oh, what's a TikTok account that you find super interesting, it's Sisters and Seekers account, the Sisters and Seekers account, because their video views are fantastic, their following's really big, and their videos are very individual. You can know a Sisters and Seekers video by just the audio or just the style of video or how they intro it and stuff, and I think that's really important, and they've sort of built that themselves through time. So it's almost finding a way to incorporate trends into your brand but making it your own so people know it's you, opposed to just sort of using an audio for the sake of it, or using some sort of visual just for the sake of it, which is very tricky. And you'll know just as much as me, social media changes so much. In the past couple of years, it's changed a lot in terms of what people want and how people use it, and almost the sort of demand on like high value content, because everyone can, a lot of people have access to that really good tech or the latest phone and or a camera and stuff like that. So like their TikToks be so high production or sort of such of a high quality that it is hard to keep up potentially maybe in that aspect as well. And finally touch on like a lot of brands don't have a massive social team, or they don't have a social team. They have a marketer that does the socials too. So not every brand is sort of given social the chance, because it's maybe not necessarily the most revenue driven channel compared to like your paid. I'm sure you'll be able to back that up, and like your email marketing, for example, is a massive part of every brand. You know, whether you think you're big time or not, you're going to have email marketing at some point. So,
do you think maybe brands underestimate or undervalue the power of content and organic content, or do you think it's maybe like that balance of like they just don't have the resource to commit to it, or how do you see that?
I think because it doesn't necessarily directly translate into sales all the time, it can be dismissed. But like we touched on briefly before, a lot of people will legitimize a company through their social media and how big their following is. And, you know, obviously massive brands don't have to focus on it as much, like Bottega. Everyone knows Bottega, so they don't need to have an Instagram, because you can go in and see them in Selfridges or Harrods and you're like, well, that's fine, I know they're real, then I know they're. But some maybe up and coming brands or mid-range brands, I think it is super important, and that's how you stand out. Because like we sort of say, there's so many small businesses and so many independent clothing brands and just independent brands in general, that what makes you stand out, it's that person. It's that person going onto Instagram and going, oh, that person runs that brand, and seeing that reel and being able to resonate with that brand. And I think it's a tricky one, and I think it is very, at the moment, it's very, well, if you like it, you can do it. If you don't like it, you don't have to do it. But in the near future, we're all sort of getting more, you can live online so easily now, that I think in the next couple of years, it'll be super vital for brands just to have a platform, big or small. Like big brands will just grow through, you know, like if Bottega launched an Instagram tomorrow, they would get thousands and thousands and thousands of followers just for existing. And I think small brands it's a way for small brands to break through. So I think a lot of bigger brands dismiss it because they don't need it, whereas smaller brands, I think that is how you grow. Like another sort of really good brand is Scuffers. I think they're a Spanish streetwear brand. Their socials
I cannot miss their ads. Like,
no,
their Facebook ads get me.
yeah, and it's a lot of it is paid and it's in your face and stuff, but their socials are like immaculate, really. They're so on brand. It's so, you know, you recognise a post of theirs without seeing the brand, without seeing the caption or anything, because their image is so not even unique, but I suppose so them. And like you say, I mean, the paid ads and stuff is crazy. I'm the same, but again, a lot of it stems from that cool Instagram and their owner. Oh, I'm going to forget his name now, but he wears Scuffers a lot. He posts a lot in them. He lives that lifestyle that people probably go, oh, I want a bit of that, so I'm going to buy the clothing to make me feel like that. And their clothing's fantastic as well. I think we can talk as much as we want about social media and stuff, but your product has also got to be there, and I think theirs is definitely that. And it's the same for brands like Represent and like About Blank. Their products are definitely there too, which is like your sort of final hurdle to cross. Because if you order a product and you don't like it from a brand, you just won't buy it again, no matter how good their social is. So, you know.
And then probably just to maybe wrap up about your role before maybe we'll fire off with some quick questions about you and your personal choices. What does a day-to-day in the life of Luke look like at work? Like what for anyone wanting to get into a role similar to you, what kind of tasks do they have to pick up? What skills do you think they need to do on a day-to-day basis?
I think, you know, first things first, you've got to be sort of savvy with social. You've got to know your way around. If I don't know, there's something gone wrong with the scheduling system or a post, you've got to be able to sort of figure it out on your own, see what's happened. So having that, just that day-to-day experience in social is really important, you know. And a lot of us are on Instagram enough anyway. It's not really a hurdle that people think about. But a lot of it is like community management. So we'll hop on, we'll reply to comments, we'll reply to tagged photos and stuff, and people really enjoy that. I think. I mean, I tag brands in my Instagram posts, and I know for a fact that if some of the brands reply, I'm like, oh, that's nice. They've taken time out of their usual sort of BAU to reply to this post that I've tagged them in and stuff. And I think that is another thing that I would advise if you ever work for a brand or a retailer or something, make sure you do that community management and staying in touch with your community. I think people appreciate that more than you think. So yeah, community management, and then scheduling. We'll bulk make a lot of content quite a lot of the time, and then I'll spend a lot of my time editing on my phone, on my laptop, depending on where the content is. And then copy. So we'll make the content first. I put it in my calendar. I try and plan a week or 2 or 3 weeks ahead, depending on how deep the content is. Obviously, if I know we've got an event in a month's time, we'll plan stories and stuff as soon as possible to sort of hype that event up and whatnot. But a lot of the content is done sort of a week ahead, and we'll make the actual physical content, and then we'll write copy and stuff. And you know, nowadays I don't use Chat GPT to create captions, but it's great for inspo on words, because if I'm doing, I can do anywhere between like 35 to 70 content pieces a week. I'm going to use the same vocabulary. I don't know that many words, so Chat GPT is great sort of tool for maybe just spicing your captions up a bit. And I would never rely on it, but it's great for sort of inspiration and stuff.
I use it a lot for, like you say, for rephrasing stuff.
Yeah.
Because I think you can tell when it's like straight up, you know, not the tone, but it's useful for that idea switch, isn't it? Or just finding another word, because like
100%.
I keep using the same words over and over again. You're like, how else can I say this sort of thing?
Yeah. So, you know, content, copy, and then we're very lucky that we the office is next to the studios where we film a lot of our ecom stuff. So we'll hop over and see what product is there on that day, and we'll go and film maybe like an unboxing or a product review, or you know, we'll get like some on body sort of shots of clothing and stuff like that. But obviously I know for a lot of brands and companies that won't be the same. So I think it's for example, we have an influencer team that deal with contacting influencers and working with influencers and stuff, and they'll get content back for us, and then we sort of do it on a more smaller scale as well. And then a lot of it is just sort of like stories, for example. They're a great revenue driver in terms of, you know, your stories are hitting the right audience because it's the audience that follow you. So it's creating those interactive stories. Well, how can you do that? Again, it's important to know what products are popping off and stuff like that. I think it's just very fast paced. Like, I've got to do this every day for 4 brands. So it is sort of streamlining a lot of those. So we have a lot of like templates, like stories, for example. Set yourself up some Canva templates where you can interchange copy and product and stuff like that. And I think that's really helpful. And that's sort of been one of the things maybe I'd advise, going back to the early part of the call, streamlining and being able to be as efficient as possible, super helpful, because that's when you can sort of plan your extracurricular stuff and maybe your long-term projects or long-term campaigns that you want to plan. And then that's sort of what I do with my spare time, is I'll go through and be like, oh, who can we work with? What new sort of maybe content type can we do, or what new sort of reel format? And a lot of it is research and looking at, like you say, like I'm all over brands' socials all the time, because you just got to be. I think Instagram is open on my computer from 8:30 in the morning to 4:35 when I finish, non-stop. It's always there. So a lot of it is what you'd expect, but just quite a lot of. And then obviously I get to do the fun events every now and again, which has been great. Obviously I've been to represent events, worked to represent, obviously worked with Bell staff, and then we've had a couple of events sort of in our own store over the past like year or two that I've been to and covered. So yeah, and then it'll be touching base with marketing team and maybe the buyers, because sometimes the buyers will go, oh, we haven't had a push of this brand for a while, can you push this brand, or this brand want this posting about their product and stuff. So it is just, you can pick and sort of choose, and you'll hear back, and brands will want certain stuff posting at certain times and whatnot. So it's busy, but I think once you get in the flow of it,
it's about being organised. And
it's about being organised, and marketing. It's not the most intense job in the world, and I do not, I do believe that, but it can be, and you can have to do quite a lot, and it feels like a lot of little jobs and stuff need doing. So, and then maybe sort of once a week, I'll go through and update highlights and stuff on Instagram accounts, and maybe just sort of trawl through the Facebook pages and Pinterest and whatever, just make sure everything looks all right and on brand, and making sure, for example, that something that I'd never really thought about is just like thumbnails on reels looking nice, and what can we do to make them look prettier or sort of more sort of so they correlate with each other and stuff like that. So it's a lot of like little tasks and stuff, but no, it's good fun. It's good fun.
Well, that I think probably wraps up the questions for Coggles, and I know you're, like you say, you're very active on social, so if people have got any questions on how to get into the industry or what your day-to-day looks like, I'm sure you'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I'm sure my Instagram will be somewhere on a link or something like that. So yeah, happy to answer any sort of questions and what have you, definitely.
So before we wrap up, I'm just going to go through maybe a couple of quick fire questions, just more around, we'll park work for a sec, but maybe around your personal style and your interests in fashion.
Yeah.
And then we'll look to wrap it up. So first question would be how would you describe your personal style right now?
Streetwear has been, it'll always be that sort of maybe higher level streetwear. Like, got my Palace hat on now. Palace is like a massive part, like core, I suppose, of my wardrobe. Palace and Supreme. I'm sort of, it's probably just a more mature version of what 2016 to 2020 streetwear was. I think sort of like it's grown up a bit from then. So yeah, sort of that high level streetwear is probably comfort, but I'm always repping those sorts of brands. So
next question would be I think I probably know the answer to this one, is where do you look for style inspiration now?
I think Instagram is just, there's just so many, obviously being part of your community and stuff, you always see so many different styles and so many different ways of styling things. And I think, to be honest, I tend to just sort of, I'll see a piece and I'll be like, yeah, I like that. And then I'll think about how I'm going to style it later, almost. I'll maybe look for inspiration on, like I say, like maybe Pinterest every now and again, but a lot of it will be through Instagram. And I'm currently I look a lot on sort of men's fashion, TikTok and stuff, and that's a great inspiration. I think you do see a lot of normal people styling stuff, and it's not that necessarily like super elevated out there fashion. It's that everyday wear, what to wear to the office, what I wore today, that sort of thing. And I think that's what I appreciate is not sort of hyping things up for Instagram. It's that sort of
casual, easy.
Yeah, I work a lot, so I don't want anything too complicated that I'm just not comfortable in. It's always comfort first, and that's how I'd advise anyone to dress, really.
Next question is, what are your favourite places to shop?
Favourite places to shop? I mean, I do shop a lot at work, so Coggle stuff. I think because you live it, you're always around it, and you sort of pick up those little pieces and stuff here and there. And then, where do I like to shop? I like my basic pieces, so like ASOS design is always really reliable. Always like my ASOS design pieces. Weekday, I shop a lot of weekday for like jeans and like essential pieces like that. And then obviously I've got like pieces from Palace and stuff. So I'll mix those like basic pieces from, like I say, like ASOS Design or Weekday and Uniqlo with my sort of maybe more out there pieces from the likes of Palace, or like I've got like a hidden PDF t-shirt on today. So those sorts of more unique, oh, I haven't seen that before, or I've, you know, who's that by sort of pieces. So yeah, I think that would be.
And what was the last thing you picked up?
Oh, what was the last thing I picked up? It was probably a pair of Weekday jeans. I probably went about 3 or 4 years without wearing jeans at all.
I hate wearing jeans.
I'm the same, and my girlfriend was like, oh, you know, like, try a pair. So I bought a pair from Weekday, and I've now got 2 pairs, looking to buy my third of exactly the same jean, just in a different wash, different colour. So it's probably a pair of jeans. And I'll be honest, I wear the only con of working in an office Monday to Friday is you have to actually wear nice things every day. So I just wear chuck a pair of them on, and I'm obsessed with t-shirts. I have a ridiculous amount of t-shirts, so chuck a nice t-shirt on and off you go. So
what's the next thing you've got your eye on? What's on the wish list?
As it comes to Christmas, I think I'm going to treat myself to something from Our Legacy. I think really like their socials and like their like lookbooks and stuff. I think they're really interesting, and I see a lot of people recommending Our Legacy shirts because they're built to last. They're very sort of muted, so they go with a lot of things, and I think it is that sort of.
This is Our Legacy. Well, nice. Kind of.
Yes, it's Our Legacy Workshop. Yeah.
So the jeans, I feel like the jeans and the boots are very popular as well at the minute.
It's the Camion boots, because they look like their boots, and boots are popular at the moment, but they look like very smart shoes when you've got the jeans over the top and stuff. So yeah, probably an Our Legacy shirt, and maybe I know they just dropped another collection with Stussy on Our Legacy Workshop, so I might pick something up from there. But yeah, I think I'm content with my wardrobe, so it's picking up those like hero pieces, I suppose.
No, as someone who
likes sneakers
is into
sneakers, this might be a good question for you, or you might not have one. But is there any item of clothing or shoes that you regret selling now that you wish you still had?
Yes. So it's actually not that long ago I sold. So obviously Virgil Abloh and Nike released like the 50 pairs of Dunks and like the different colorways and stuff, but the original pair, which came out, I want to say like a year or two before those, it was like a silver and university red Dunk. I won them on a raffle from End when they dropped, and I had them, and obviously very sadly Virgil passed away I think the year later, and I was like, oh, he's got to keep them and stuff, and I never really wore them because they weren't not wearable, but they didn't go over a lot of what I had, so I just sort of moved them on, and you know, I got good money back for them. I'm not gonna, you know, but maybe regret selling them. I think they would have been nice to sort of just have as like a sort of grail piece, I suppose. And I'm a sucker for a nice sneaker box. I keep all my boxes, and it was a beautiful metallic silver all over with black detailing and like the sort of signature off-white holes, like hole punches all the way through. So yeah, it was a beautiful shoe, but I think at the time it was the right thing to do. But now I'm like, oh, if I got a load of money, I'd potentially buy it back.
I think I'm the same with a few pairs of shoes, and I think for me, I don't know if you're the same. A lot of it is like almost like a sentimental sort of thing. So you buy it at the time, and at the time you were thinking or feeling some type of way, and you're like, oh, I want to get that. Or you buy it at a certain shop when you're on holiday or
100%,
something, and then you're like, like the resale was like, I sold a couple of pairs of Jordan 1s from 5 or 6 years ago, and like, albeit I don't wear them too much, but I'm like, oh, I kind of wish I didn't sell them.
Yeah, well, I've still the first pair of like sneakers I got, first pair of like hype sneakers on a raffle I got was an Air Jordan 1 top 3. This, we're talking like 7-8 years ago now. Still got them, absolutely battered. The boxers had it, but I've still got them, and they're sort of almost too bad. There's no point selling them, so I'll always keep them as a nice little sort of memento of where it all started, I suppose. Yeah.
Like there's some that like even I wish that I still had, but like just more for the nostalgia of it. Like I don't know if you remember, like I was in university. I don't know. I think it would have been second year of uni, maybe. Might be showing my age a bit, but Pharrell released the Superstar collection where
he had like 50 colours, and I had like the red
and the blue. Like I don't know how I wore them then, but like even though I wouldn't wear them now, but I kind of wish I still had them.
Yeah, because a lot of it reminds you of where you were at the time.
Exactly,
sort of thing. You know, like I regret not having a pair from the Virgil Abloh 10 collection with Nike. You know, but now I mean it would. It's now I've got like a flat to pay for and all sorts of things. I can't be spending thousands of pounds on a pair of Prestos or something. Do you know what I mean? So it's that sort of. A lot of it is perspective now, I think, but yeah, definitely.
And then the final question before we wrap up is maybe a controversial one, so you might have to think about this one, is what's something in fashion or what's a trend that everyone seems to like and be a part of that you really just don't? Like, I don't like that.
I think, to be honest, for most things I'm very like, I wouldn't wear it, but it's fine if you wear it. I get it. I think something I didn't really get on, and I've probably missed the boat. Obviously, going into autumn winter now was like jorts, wearing like those sort of big baggy jorts and stuff. I don't think it ever suited what I wore, or what sort of clothing I already had. So it was never something I invested in. But again, like I don't think it looked good on me. But I've definitely seen streetwear fits, and I'm like, yeah, that looks really cool. But I know for a fact it doesn't always translate to your own personal style. And then maybe as more of a something I see quite a lot in work is it's a women's wear thing. It'll be leggings and blazers. So a lot of girls will wear chunky trainers, leggings, hoodie, and a blazer. And to me, it just I don't know, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work, I just don't like it. But again, like I get Molly May wear stuff like that, and a lot, big UK influencers and stuff will wear stuff like that. So I see where the inspiration from that comes from. But not that I'd wear it anyway. But I don't think it's something that if it disappeared from the planet tomorrow, I don't think I'd miss it, to be honest.
So that's where we wrap up. So Luke, thank you so much for your time today. I'll be making sure to leave all your socials linked in the bio.
Yeah.
Anything to wrap up? Any shout outs before you finish?
No, I don't think so. Obviously, shout out to you for having me on here. I think this is maybe a different sort of chat to maybe the previous guests you've had on and stuff. But it's definitely been interesting. I think fashion's always interesting to talk about because we might agree on a lot of things, but we'll also disagree on things. So it's always good to have that sort of communication on what that looks like. But shout out to you and the podcast and stuff. It's definitely something that not just this episode. Obviously, thanks for listening if you're still listening. But obviously, go back and listen to the other episodes as well because there's definitely a lot to pick up on, and it's just interesting. I feel like from where I'm from, there's not a lot of fashion talk, so it is always good to have that sort of thing to come back to and sort of get into that conversation for sure. Yes.
Amazing. Thanks for your time again, Luke. Have a good rest of your day.
You too.